stellst du dir den Transport in deiner Stadt in der Zukunft vor?
Yo espero que menos coches, algo más de bicis, imagino que todo irá un poco más tirando al eléctrico, que si patinetes, que si bicicletas, etc.
Ich glaube, da wo wir jetzt gerade sind, das hätte man vor 10 Jahren nicht gedacht. Wenn man überlegt, das iPhone wurde 2008 eingeführt, jetzt ist kaum denkbar, dass es eine Welt ohne Smartphone gibt. Und wenn man irgendwie nochmal 12 Jahre in die Zukunft denkt, wer weiß, was wir für mobile Geräte in der Hand halten. Und genauso ist es auch auf den Verkehr anwendbar. Also vor 10 Jahren elektrische Autos waren auch irgendwie undenkbar, beziehungsweise irgendwie Zukunftsmusik.
Ich stelle mir eigentlich vor, dass es mehr Carsharing gibt. Also das würde ich mir auch eigentlich wünschen, dass da eine höhere Taktung besteht, weil ich persönlich habe auch kein Auto mehr und benutze das eben sehr oft.
Ya gün geçtikçe İstanbul'un nüfusu artıyor, kalabalık artıyor. O yüzden trafiğin azalacağını düşünmüyorum. Scooter gibi, ya martı gibi şeyler bir yere kadar çözüm sağlasa da hani bu trafiğin azalacağı veya işte daha iyiye gideceğini göstermiyor bence. Nüfus arttıkça daha da artacak.
Že ta v budoucnu asi bude hodně ty, jak říkáte, ty elektromobily nebo Tesla nebo i ty tříkolky jako ta alternativní doprava, než je ta klasická, ale třeba je problém asi s tou Teslou, že si to nemůže dovolit každý, jako by to bylo hezký, jako by to bylo ekologický Tesla, že jo, ale je drahá zatím ty elektromobility nebo tyhle, že to je pro Českou republiku drahý takové.
So I hope you all had a great lunch. And not too heavy, because then we have problems keeping you alive here or awake. So welcome to this session. We are here to talk about the perspective of from young researchers regarding urban mobility and the future of urban mobility. I'm Martin Vendel, and I'm the director of EIT Urban Mobility Academy. We did, earlier this year, launched the Doctoral Training Network and have about already 26 PhD candidates within the network, and we will grow even further during this year. About 15 universities have joined the network, and we offer PhD candidates innovation entrepreneurship training, networking and knowledge sharing opportunities, and 4 to 6 months research placement. It's a pleasure for me to see all of you participating here now, and I would also like to welcome our panelists. That's Avital, Jani, Anna, and Benjamin. But let us first ask them to make a short introduction of themselves. Avital, let's start with you.
Hi, thank you, Martin, and thank you for having me here in the panel. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Avital Angel. I'm a landscape architect and urban planner, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Technion institution placed in Israel. And my research area is walkability and big data.
Let's continue with Jani.
Yes, thank you, Martin, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Jani Fernanda Velazquez. I'm an architect. My PhD research is in the area of management and innovation in architecture, more focused on resilience in cities. And yes, I have been working in all kind of projects, and right now I'm very interested about urban mobility.
Anna?
Yes, thank you, Martin, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. My name is Anna Clark. I work at EIT Urban Mobility based in the North Hub in Copenhagen. And since this is a relevance about PhDs, I have a PhD in transport modeling from the Institute for Transport Studies, which I completed 11 years ago. So since then, I've worked in consultancy and for the city network Polis, long time in mobility.
And last, we have Benjamin, our head of the Doctoral Training Network.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin, for having me. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to the panel discussion here. My name is Benjamin Büttner. I'm working for around 10 years now at the Technical University of Munich at the chair of Urban Structure and Transport Planning. I'm a learned geographer, and then I did my PhD in transport engineering. Since then, I'm heading a research group on accessibility planning. So integrated urban and transport planning. And as you already mentioned, I'm also heading the Doctoral Training Network within EIT Urban Mobility.
So welcome all, and thank you for joining the panel. We will now run the session in 4 parts, and we will take 4 different perspectives. And we have pre-recorded the views of our PhD candidates. And after each video, we will here reflect upon what we will hear. The first video input is regarding how the PhD candidates' research is intended to impact the future. So please play the first video.
I would like my research to increase both the likelihood and velocity of adoption of automated parking, and maybe in turn even then automated driving, as well as the realization of the value that the service proposes, and to improve everyday life.
I think my work, which combines this evaluation of the fears and perceptions that people have about cycling, and on the other hand, how accidents are analyzed involving cyclists. I think by combining these 2 aspects, I think my work can help cities better define how cycling can be tackled in order to drive more sustainable transportation. And on the other hand, also provide more safe intersection for cyclists.
In the future, we're going to see a lot of things above us, flying drones, delivery drones, passenger drones, and of course, the capacity of our airspace is limited. So I would like my research to be helpful to estimate and to manage the traffic.
The joy of the outcome of my research will be seeing cities using this decision support system, which I'm working on, to look at ways in which they can implement the urban vehicle access regulations as a policy instrument to overcome the challenges and, well, to bring a better environment for their people and citizenry.
Well, these are all very interesting and exciting topics, I would say, with also great potential. One reflection from my side when I hear this is that their research seemed to be possible to apply and implement within a rather short time frame. Would you say, is this typical for urban mobility research? And how do you think that EIT Urban Mobility community can facilitate or even speed this up further so we get a faster implementation? Anna?
Yes. So from my side, I think that one of the things I think is it's very true within urban mobility research, we're very close to people and impacting people's lives and how things are working on the ground. And in order to have these effects and to speed this up, you need this cooperation with other stakeholders who are working, so with the cities or with companies who are working on these things that can help speed this up. So bringing that in, so they're not doing their research in a silo, but that they can really start thinking about how this can be implemented while they're doing their research.
Benjamin, from your point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree with Anna. I think EIT Urban Mobility, our community is really boosting this implementation, also concerning our doctoral candidates, because within this community they will find all kind of partners that are interested in bringing something on the street. So I think this is very helpful. And also within the Doctoral Training Network, or in short DTN, we are really trying to build those bridges, not just with academics, but also with partners from cities, from industry partners, from NGOs, whoever wants to play an active role within urban mobility. And I think that's the right place. And I'm happy to have so many motivated doctoral candidates around. So we are really blessed.
Thank you. Avital and Jani, do you share the view here that we heard from the other PhD students or candidates that there is a lot we can do and it can be done rather fast? It was kind of my interpretation of what they said.
Yeah, I think that what all of these wishes have in common is that they aspire to be implemented some way in practice and affect our everyday lives. And I think it is a huge challenge, as in many cases we find great research works whose ideas unfortunately remain among the academy's walls. And that is why I believe that an entrepreneurial mindset is important in order to find ways to not only perform the research, but also implement it in real life. And that's what this program can be very helpful in for these, for the PhD candidates who take the EIT program.
Jani?
Yes, I think that we need these multidisciplinary teams to solve together these urban mobility challenges, like with policymakers, private companies, academia, integrating the systems that we already have with the new ones that we want to develop, achieving challenges like sustainable materials, mobility strategies, and circular economy.
So in general, what would you say, any one of you? I mean, how much will actually the research that we do today influence the future of urban mobility? It's a very general question, but if you could reflect upon that. Or do we already have, I mean, how far are we? Or do we already have the solutions, or how close are we to the kind of what we need?
Well, I think there's a lot of solutions out there, but the trick comes in with implementing them. And you get a lot of, I mean, I think exactly as the other speakers on the panel were talking about, this need for multidisciplinary, being able to work with different stakeholders, get things implemented on the ground. And this is where, you know, we as a community can help support this, and looking at what are these barriers and how can we come across this? Because quite often the solutions are there, but we need to think of ways to do that. And it can also be innovations in the way we do collaboration, for example, that can help us to actually implement things.
Anyone else?
I can add to this. I think lots of research failed previously because academics worked just with academics. If we can somehow collaborate, and this has been said before, but I think we really have to stress that point. The collaboration is needed, and the collaboration is also needed with citizens, because at the end we have to make them use our innovations. And then if nobody sees a need, then this will also not be useful at the end of the day. So again, communication is key. Communication between all kind of stakeholders, as well as the cities that will at the end be our playground and be the way we move.
I really like what Benjamin said before as well about being this bridge. I think that's really important, because then it's the two-way as well. So it's like the academia is coming to the other stakeholders, and the other stakeholders are coming to academia, and learn from each other to do things better. Your research will be better if you go and talk to a transport planner who's working in a city about how things work on the ground. And your transport planning will be better if you use the latest research in what's going on around the world. So it's a two-way. It's this collaboration is very important.
I think I'm a bit, and I envy the PhD candidates here actually, because when I did a PhD many years ago, and to be honest, I couldn't really say that I felt that I had a huge impact on society, but I think you can. So Avital and Jani, is that a feeling you have that you are actually now shaping the future? You do have a significant impact on what will happen and how you will live your lives.
Well, I can say from my perspective that when I finished my bachelor, I already started working in a urban planner's office as a landscape architect, and I was doing my master's at the same time. And that was when I realized the huge gap between what I've learned and heard in the academy and what I see in practice. And that actually the thing that pushed me to go for PhD research. And my aim from the beginning is to develop a practical tool that can be used by planners and urban planners, landscape architects, decision makers. So it's a big hope. I think it's a huge challenge. I don't underestimate it at all. But I do think the gap is big, and we do need, I agree with Anna and Benjamin that the collaboration is crucial. So we need more programs and platforms like that to collaborate.
Yes, I agree with Avital that we need to do our research sometimes more practical. In my experience, as I'm an architect, I always want to see everything built. So for me, it's kind of difficult just to leave it on paper. It is good, but it's necessary maybe to see if it's working, and with this, share best practices with other cities, with other researchers and different companies, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on, and the second video will focus on common misconceptions regarding the research done by these PhD candidates. So let's run the second video.
I think the biggest misconception regarding my topic specifically is that the technology part would solve the exchange of waste materials. And I think that I've found that technology is the easiest part to fix. That exists. What doesn't exist is a new mindset of how we view materials and looking at it as a sort of waste inventory for companies, and sort of moving away from looking at it as a problem of waste rather than thinking of it as an opportunity. And that sounds very corny, but it is actually the one issue that we're facing at the moment.
People assume that these new flying vehicles are going to be as loud as helicopters, which is fortunately not the case, because the manufacturers work on how to improve them, so they won't cause that much noise and won't be that annoying for the communities.
I'm dealing with accessibility analysis, and if we talk about accessibility, let's say having access to schools, having access to jobs, you could do two things. You could either improve the transport system, you will be faster at your school, faster at your work, or you could think it the other way around. What happens if you put the destinations closer to the users? And I think a common misconception is that we mainly focus on the first one. We mainly focus on this transport network. We want to travel faster, but at the end of the day, it's about reaching something, and it's not about your travel speed, because at least my opinion is that what actually for the people is counting the opportunities that they can realize in space, or that they can fulfill during a certain time of the day.
Okay, some additional views there on the misconceptions and maybe what we really should focus on. But a common theme seems as the research and our ambitions here that I described may even be easier to materialize compared to what we think, because the people think that this is more tricky and more hard than we do than what it is in reality. Yet, as we mentioned already, this is still a very complex area due to a number of interdependencies. Do you share the view expressed in the video, and how do you think that we are able to overcome these misconceptions?
You're going to pick on someone, Martin.
Yeah.
Pick on someone else this time.
Benjamin, let's start.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think it's very interesting to listen to the students, to the researchers, to the young researchers, talking about misconceptions. And I think this is something where we can learn a lot from. Avoiding those misconceptions, I think we need to strengthen the dialogue again. So I think the communication is key. Communication again with all kind of stakeholders, and what we often neglect in our expert community is talking to normal people, talking to my mom, talking to a grandmother, explaining it to little kids. And I think by this making it simpler, simplifying things, we come to the core of it that is meaningful, and I think that could be a way. Yeah.
Jani, do you have similar problems, so to say, or misconceptions in the research you do?
Yes, I have some misconceptions because I'm working on low-income housing, and sometimes it's the way we understand low-income housing sometimes is very stereotype, and it's difficult to move these stereotypes. But as for example, as the Magdalena Pesca example of air mobility, I believe that sometimes we think that is going to be helicopters everywhere, but if they can develop as much as possible transport eco-friendly, and not noisy, is going to be a very option to travel, for example.
Okay. And Avital, for your area?
Yeah, I actually really liked what Misha was saying about how changing the mindset is the biggest challenge rather than improving technology. He said it might sound corny, but I think it's truly relevant and important when talking about urban mobility in general and about urban planning in particular. And I think the best example for that from the past year is the changes that have occurred in the public realm due to COVID pandemic, where we were forced to kind of change our mindset very quickly. And we discussed some examples at the DTN annual forum, as we saw many streets in Europe, for example, that changed their nature by converting traffic and parking lanes into public sitting areas. And there is no new technology involved, but only a new way of thinking or perceiving the street area. So changing a familiar mindset is an extremely hard task. And when there is no world pandemic, it is a long process and not corny at all. So I really liked the perspective that he gave.
Thank you. And from your point of view, Anna, how do we deal with these misconceptions?
Yeah, I think that it's not just an issue for doctoral students. So for anyone who is going really deep into a topic, I think, especially for doctoral students, you get this because you're essentially your world expert on your PhD. Nobody else is going to understand this topic as well as you do. And everybody comes with their own perspective and their own understanding, and they're, from different angles. And as Benjamin says, it's about how you communicate about that. And then it's related all to this issue of mindsets. We have different mindsets. How do we communicate to these different groups to move forward in what we're doing? So it's like you're world expert on something, and nobody is going to understand this as much as you. You have to think about how you can simplify it, and within the context that these other people are understanding and the lenses that they're looking at your research in. So I think I'm just thinking misconceptions. It's that people perceive your research in a specific way. You have to understand a bit where they're coming from to be able to answer those misconceptions.
But are these misconceptions then a barrier for implementation and getting people along?
I think definitely they can be. I think in the case of when we're saying we need to see a shift in mindset, if we're talking about accessibility versus mobility, for example, which was the third speaker in the video there, it's going to be really difficult when you've built a system that is based on, you know, reducing travel time, and then you're like, well, actually, we should be focusing on accessibility when you have the whole system. So it's this misconception because of the framework that people are working in, the framework that has been created from that, and that can be a barrier to implementation. So redefining the frame is an important part in dealing with these misconceptions. I can see Benjamin nodding there. You're working with accessibility a lot as well, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Anna, for raising this. We've seen this quite often working with practitioners, to be honest. So they are really trapped in their silos. And I think this also is related to what Elias said, the last speaker, that we mainly think about how to improve the transport system and so on. But at the end, we are dealing with urban mobility, and we want to create livable urban spaces. And for this reason, we also have to look at what we can do in land use planning. But not just, so we need to connect this, and this is where accessibility kicks in. And in accessibility, we also have a very individual perspective, obviously. So we have to make sure that new options are affordable for lower income groups. We have to make sure that disabled people can participate. So it's not, we keep on forgetting this individual component. By the way, also temporal component is interesting and important here, because how you move differs from daytime to nighttime. So there might be some scary alleys that you don't want to go and then do a detour or jump in the car because you feel more safer. So these are many different points that need to be acknowledged. And I think this is also very much linked to what Avital said and Misa in the first video, that misconception that technology will save us. I don't believe in this because we need to take into account what people are really asking for, and include them in the conversation again. And then we will find a solution, and technology can surely help here, but not just doing some fancy development that nobody at the end needs and can afford. And so I think this is something that we should take into account.
But that would, I mean, what you described now demands, I mean, we usually say that we need to break down the silos and integrate all the different areas. At the same time, we know it's quite a struggle. It's not that easy. Not even within, if we now take the university perspective here, for the different departments to work together is not always. It may be a major barrier to handle. So is that, are we now moving into a shift there, also from the academic perspective, that the different disciplines start to cooperate much more to be able to address these challenges?
Are you asking me or?
Yeah, no, yeah, well, whoever, yes.
Sorry,
you felt targeted there.
To jump in again, I don't want to talk too much.
No?
I think so, that answering your question, I see a strong trend that within academia, also the different disciplines are cooperating no more. However, again, this is not enough. So what can be observed is also that all of a sudden everywhere are open labs popping up. And this is great, because this is a good platform for a discussion between different stakeholders, trying some things. Also, the street experiments were mentioned. This is also the playground here. Basically, is the city, the street itself, and this needs to be run with the help of different stakeholders. Academics, city officials, industry partners, and citizens at the end of the day. So I think we are going in the right direction, but we all have to meet on the same level. I think this is also key for the discussion, because back in the days, maybe some academics were kind of snobby, and some other people don't want to interact. I think this needs to change, and I see it change here.
Yeah.
Which is
we can of course check now whether it's true what you say. If we ask Jani and Avital, do you feel that you are cooperating across a certain discipline, and you have a lot of cooperation with other academic disciplines?
I must be honest and say that 10 years ago I wasn't in the academy world, so it's hard for me to say if today it's like kind of a trend, or if it was better or worse 10 years ago, for example. And I mostly feel like it's in my hands if I'm going to work to do this cooperation or not, because yeah, I don't feel like everyone's pushing me towards that. I feel like it's my responsibility to do that and to cooperate other disciplines, because it's really easy. I think when you're working on your research and most of the time you work alone, it's really easy to stay just in your kind of small world and your perspective. So it's really up to the PhD candidates, I think, to take this different mindset of trying to combine these worlds. That's in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that work with other multidisciplinary teams gives you more understanding of what is the problem and how to solve it integral. So for example, in architecture, we just sometimes build and we don't understand how urban mobility is working or another issues. And I believe like that to make them work, it's necessary to work with multidisciplinary teams. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can maybe say something about this trend, even though I haven't been in academia. I finished my PhD 11 years ago, but I have collaborated a lot with academia over the years. And there is definitely, I would say, a trend to moving towards bringing in new disciplines and collaborating more. But we're not all of the way there yet, I would say. There is definitely room for more collaboration. But in terms of the disciplines that are needed, I mean, in urban mobility, it traditionally was engineers, and here we see we've got architects involved in this. We've got people who are looking at behavioral science. There's lots of different parts of this, and there's more of a recognition and move towards that of understanding of how all of these different research elements are part of understanding and building the sustainable future mobility.
If I can actually add to what Anna said, because I agree. I think that from a planner perspective, I do feel that today, more than before, when we work in a team on a project, and at least I hear from my colleagues as well, that it used to be that all the roads engineering, they kind of led the plans when dealing with the new streets. Design, and today landscape architects and other urban designers are much more involved and being asked questions about what is better for the pedestrian, from the pedestrian perspective, from the cyclist perspective. So it is more combined today, I think, in practice.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next video, which is also reflecting a bit more on the challenges from the PhD candidates. So the third video focuses on what we need to overcome to succeed. So let's play the third video.
I think the biggest challenge in the future and now as well is how to use all this data that we collect. So all this data that we have, big data and smart cities concept, etc. There are many people that are skeptical about it. So I think the main challenge is how to use it, who gets to use it, and what can we use.
So what's challenging is that our cities in the past have been built upon the idea of motorized individual transport. So have been the businesses, and that's the way people have been living like for centuries. So I think it's difficult to work within these existing conditions that we have of infrastructure, of the processes, of how people conduct businesses, of their mindsets, and just to offer solutions that are attractive and convenient for all the stakeholders.
I think in principle, the issue that we have in mobility is that we have a tension between the interests of the one individual and we have interests of the common, so of the community. And very often these two dimensions do not match. So just to give an example, the individual might be, might want to be very fast at work and get a super fast car and is driving to work. But this is obviously causing a lot of issues that we see on the streets, congestion, accidents and everything. So I think that's kind of in a nutshell, the key challenge of urban mobility. And at the same time, we need to kind of find a balance between these two different angles.
Change the behavior, and especially travel behavior. It's very difficult to change, and maybe this is the major challenge in our city, and our politicians have a strong role in this changing to improve our cities.
Okay, so we do have a lot here. I mean, in the video we talked about handling data, rethinking infrastructure design and what think about what it should be used for, balancing the interest of the individual and the community, and behavioral change is an important thing. So those are all mentioned here as barriers. And of course, this, as we already touched upon, this is a very complex area with quite a lot of challenges to reach sustainable mobility and more livable urban spaces. But your view regarding these challenges, and maybe one reflection is that we have talked about these challenges for a while now that were mentioned here. Should we be worried that these are, I mean, real barriers for us to reach the future we would like to reach, or would you say that we are now dealing with these in a constructive way to reach the desired future that we all share? Should we start with Jani this time? Maybe that was a big question, sorry, but it's I mean, do you feel that we now are kind of addressing the right challenges for you to build the future that you would like to see?
Yes, I think finally we are doing it, because we are seeing that this urban growth is bringing more people and we don't need more cars. So I believe that initiatives such as the reconfiguration of the bus network, the increase in the cycling infrastructure in the cities, the use of electric vehicles, and the regulations for shared mobility, for example, add points toward for an effective urban mobility. Of course, without forgetting the environmental benefits that this solution could bring to the different cities.
Anna, you mentioned that there was you've been around for a while. So have we talked about these things for quite some time now, or is the time right now to address these challenges, or what a bit more?
I'm positive to this, because I think that if we take how the discussion was when I started my PhD in 2006, the discussion was in a completely different place. There wouldn't have been this discussion in a panel discussion in a European conference about the fact that we need to change the paradigm and the way we're thinking about things, and that we need to focus more on sustainability. It's become very much ingrained in everything that is being done within research, and it feels like it's going slow. But if you look back, there has definitely been progress. And just to bring a little bit of anecdotal evidence into this as well, I actually grew up in Brussels, and I cycled in Brussels in the 90s when I was a teenager, crazy as that may sound. And if you look at how it has changed in Brussels now, and the pedestrian of the city centre and the building of the cycling infrastructure, this was completely unthinkable when I was growing up in Brussels as a teenager. So there is definitely this change happening. So yeah, and thanks for reminding me that I'm getting old.
Sorry about that. I'm even much older, so that's okay. Yeah, just there was also here again mindset mentioned in the video, and Avital, you picked that up in the previous one. So would you say, I mean, is the mindset, as far as I understand, you do see that as a major thing to overcome these challenges that we all have a different view on the area, but do we see, and as Anna now said, we do see a change of mindset, but how can we describe what is that actually change? What is the mindset that we would like to see? Can you put words on that?
Oh wow, that's a huge question. Because I guess, yeah, you can look at it from different perspectives, but I think the main change in mindset today is really towards a more, to be more sustainable, to build more sustainable urban environments. I think we see more and more cities kind of branding themselves by declaring themselves as becoming more pedestrian friendly and cyclist friendly. So it is kind of a rising concept that, or a trend that's very hot right now. And it's something that cities are very proud of, because being more sustainable has become kind of a symbol of being more advanced. So it's a work in progress. In some places, it is happening faster, but I think in most places, we still have a lot of work to get there. I can say in Israel, if I compare different cities, then you can see Tel Aviv very progressed in that manner, and much very pedestrian friendly. But if you take other cities in Israel, they are in a completely different mindset and the situation. So they still have a lot more work to do and a lot more changes to do in the goals of the city planning. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we save you, Benjamin, until after the next video this time. So the third video, the fourth video is now focusing on what future, the general views of the future of these PhDs and what future they are shaping. So let's look at that one, and then we'll take a discussion about that. So run the video, please.
I think cities nowadays are driving their policies towards more sustainable modes, such as cycling and walking. And as we see, there's many technologies coming about new electric modes, such as e-scooters or one-wheelers. I think in the future, as we're driving away from this car-dependent planning and design, I just think that urban mobility will focus much more on how to drive these more sustainable modes, such as cycling and walking, so just such that they're more accessible for all as a whole, and not just for some.
I imagine that it will be taken away from a sort of siloed concept and study. So there's your urban planners, your architects, your sort of engineering department, and your business department. I think it's going to be more multidisciplinary, and there's no way to avoid that. And the reason is that we need new perspectives that sort of touch different areas of thinking. And the problems are just so complex now that we need problem solvers who are working together and seeing the bigger picture and a holistic perspective.
I think in the future, with big data and with this smart cities concept, we can use real-time data and to adapt things more flexibly, not only in terms of what we want, but also to prevent from these unpredictable events, right? Not prevent, but to manage the consequences of COVID or another thing that may happen. And I think that's the main idea, I think, in future, that we will be able to have more reliable, based on data, initiatives in the short term.
So I really share the view regarding what's desired here. I mean, the sustainable solutions and the better use of public space, moving away from the car-centric model and utilizing the modern technology as computer science and so on to make improvements here. It seems, when I listen to this, it seems like there is less of a difference between kind of the view of my generation and younger generations here. But the point of discussion was to have a kind of a younger view on this. Do we actually share the same desired development, or would you say, do we have a different view on what we try to build here, depending on whether you're as old as I am or as young as Avital and Jani here? What's your view on that? Anna, what? From
the aged people, no. Yes, delicately put there. But I think there is always going to be a gap between the generations that we have to think about and we have to take into account, and that is partly in terms of where you want to go, but partly in opinions of how you can work with new technologies and new ways of doing things and how fast you can do that. I think younger people tend to be better at changing. They're in a different way, and that needs to be taken into account. But we can't forget that everybody needs to be on this journey. So how do we design something for all of these different groups? And I think this perspective has come in several of the videos, and discussing about accessibility. It's accessibility for different groups, and that includes different age groups as well. When we're talking about there's going to be very data driven in the future, how is that going to affect my grandmother? Is she going to have difficulty taking the bus if she can only do it with an app? So we still have to balance all of this and try and find a way. But I really value the energy and engagement of the youth, and I hope that they're going to drive forward a lot of the change that is coming.
Jani, I mean, from your point of view, the picture we have of the future society as is, do you see is that a picture of your generation, or is it a general picture?
No, I think it's a general picture. Of course, the world is changing, but I think all generations understand the problems that are happening, and we need to give different solutions. That is only the difference for me. For example, for electric cars, we need to think that we will need more spaces where to charge them. So we will need different urban infrastructure, for example, or if we want more cycling paths to decongest our transport networks, it's a good option. But we need to understand how to adapt this infrastructure according to the needs of the city and the users.
Thank you. Benjamin, being kind of in the middle here between me and the PhD candidates, your age-wise, what are you saying? Is this a general picture, or is it so that it's something we have imposed on the younger generation, or the other way around?
I think it's difficult to answer this because we have to differentiate A with age, so I agree. So the different generations tend to move differently and have different preferences. But it's not just the age; it's also the lifestyle that they grow up, also the areas where they grow up. As Avital mentioned, I think in the previous discussion. So why are some cities front runners in cycling or something like that? And so I think we should also acknowledge these kind of factors. So also the social classes, educational levels, these are things that will shape your mobility behavior and the way that you move. And also the different options that you have. As Anna mentioned before, the old lady might not be able to have a smartphone entering a bus. For sure, she will not be able to rent a bike sharing scheme, which is app-based for now. But maybe also some people cannot afford it. And so the tricky thing now is that we have to plan for all kind of people, and we always have to acknowledge where they are living. If these measures, if these little ideas that we come up, is this suitable for the right place? So maybe bike sharing scheme makes sense somewhere where it's linked to public transport. And still, because I heard this in the morning, I think public transport still should be our main focus here. And we should think about lots of mobility innovations, but they should act more like a feeder and as complementing public transport, because at the end of the day, this is the most efficient, most social, fair way to move in bigger cities. But I know I didn't really answer your question.
No, but that's fine.
But I think we should also acknowledge these points next to the age and the generation.
Just a question then to Avital, that your generation is supposed to be more individualistic in one sense. So would you say, and now we talk about public transport, do you see that there are parts of this picture of what we like to build in the future that are different from with your generation or Benjamin here?
I think if we're talking about the difference of in the perception between the generations, I think maybe the main difference is that the young generation kind of experienced, if you look at the past 15 years, there has been massive changes going on so rapidly, like much faster than the changes that have occurred during, let's say, the 80s and the 90s. So I think that is why maybe the young generation dares to dream bigger. Like if we talk about 5 years or 10 years from today, then we think of things from space and crazy stuff, because anything is possible in 5 or 10 years. That's a huge period of time that so many changes can occur. So maybe that is why sometimes the young generation just dares to dream bigger and bring creative and crazy solutions sometimes. I think that's the main difference maybe.
And that is what we appreciate a lot, because we need you to drive change, and of course, and to sort out the problems we have generated. So that's really appreciate that. Maybe just a last question here before we conclude. If you would describe, because we are here to talk about the urban mobility future, would just describe the future that you would like to see with just 1 or 2 words. What word or words would you use to describe the future of urban mobility? Should we start with you, Benjamin?
Yeah, why not? It's not one word, but it's close to it. And if you put dashes in, it could be one word. So back to the basics, I would say.
Back to basics. Okay.
Which doesn't sound very futuristic.
Oh.
But how the planning is going. So if we think about what we also discussed during this session, policies are now driven with active modes, active mobility, social interaction, going back to public spaces. Also during COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that this has all of a sudden been a point that we need to lay a focus on. So we need enough space in our cities for social distancing, but also for meeting people. And I think that's something that is key. And back to the basics, because this is nothing new actually. So all the most attractive parts in our cities are mainly the former medieval city centers. So the ones where the roads were very narrow, where you have marketplaces, where you can exchange ideas, where you can exchange goods, where you can meet people and talk. So I think this is key, and these neighborhoods are also characteristic by a very high model split of walking and cycling. So basically, back to the basics, we don't need those.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. A bit more than 1 or 2 words, but okay. So Anna, do you have 1 or 2 words to
Okay, I'll keep it really short then. What about less transport, more sustainable?
Okay. And Jani and Avital, you will get the last word here. So except for that, I will say a few by the end. But anyhow, Jani, what would you describe this as?
Well, I think it's decarbonizing mobility, improving people's quality life, helping users to move efficiently.
Okay, thank you. And Avital, what?
Yeah, I must go with Benjamin here. I think I can't put it in better words than what he just said. Back to the basics. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you for this. And thank you for the comments and reflections, and thank you all that have listened in for participating. We will of course continue this dialogue, and you are all welcome to engage in the Doctoral Training Network. Among the different ways you can engage, I would like to highlight the annual Doctoral Forum. It's a 3-day conference next time in Munich in 2021. But you could also host one of the PhD candidates for their placement of research placement for 4 to 6 months, where they will work out of your organization, even though they work with the research being part of their PhD research. And also please visit us for on the web or contact us to get to know more. So to conclude this session, I mean, maybe my main takeaways are still, if from my point of view, it's a very positive view on the development. But it's and maybe even more important is to, when listening to the PhD candidates, is that they see that what they do matters, and they feel they have the power to shape the future that into something that they would like to see, or that we all would like to see. I think we share more or less the same view on what we try to build here. And for those of you that also would like to have a bit more of inspiration regarding what's going on in the future, I would like also to mention that we this week opened the EIT Urban Mobility web TV, where we have a lot of videos regarding different interviews, topics to watch. So please, you find that on our web. So thank you all for participating today, and let's shape the future together and to make it into something that we would like to live in and enjoy. So thank you very much.